Hey YouTube, Jedi Fuka here, and in today's video I want to go over the legendary gear. So I just finished farming quite a bit, still didn't get some sets that I want, but I want to kind of go over the gear and how I currently decide what pieces I keep and where I'm using the gear at. Obviously I'm not perfect at this, so this is just a personal opinion and to give you an idea of what I focus on whenever I'm building my characters up for content. So first we're going to go over each gear set, and then I'll kind of discuss where I use them at and what substats and stuff I'm looking for on them. Before we get into it, please check out the links and descriptions below. Really appreciate all the support you guys have been giving me. And let's get into it. So the first set here is the Executioner set. This is obviously going to be for your attack characters. So it's going to give you some attack percentage and crit rate. And if you get a third piece, you get ignore 18% of the damage dealt. For the Executioner set, I would say that it actually works really good in PvP if you get that third set to ignore 18% of defense. Cutting through defense in PvP, just like other games like this, is really good. So it's probably where you benefit the most. This is still a good attack set to use on any other set in the game. But if you're aiming for a 3-piece set, I would say the Gambler set is better for PvP. Which we'll get to that here in a little bit. But as far as damage overall, the Gambler set for me tends to put out more damage on bosses. And there's also another strategy I'm going to go over on how you can pair up legendary gear to make it more effective. The next set is going to be the Enlightenment gear here, the Platinum Knight gear. So this one gives you attack and enlightenment. I would say it's primarily going to be for your poison damage dealers. But you can also use it for your enlightenment heroes whenever you're still trying to get other enlightenment gear to push their enlightenment up. So like I have Catherine wearing some of this. That way she gets that extra heal off of it, and it's a good set for pushing enlightenment or those poison heroes. And then the Gambler set is another attack piece gear. So this one, there's two major good things about it. We got the attack percentage and attack speed, which is really good, especially for your specialty characters like Dauntless characters who do well with attack speed. And then on the third piece, we get this: when the wearer deals damage, a 30% chance to deal a 5% target's current HP true damage up to 200% of the wearer's attack. And it is derivative damage, so it doesn't crit, but when you deal damage to bosses, they of course usually have really high HP, so this alone makes you do a lot more damage than the Executioner set. I have tested this in Season 0. I'm trying to get similar sets on both so I can retest it here in Season 1 to see if it changed. But in Season 0, when I would have an Executioner set and I would get close to the same stats as far as attack, crit rate, crit damage, the Gambler set would always do more damage on bosses. So for things like Vortex and your dungeons, I recommend trying to go for Gambler's sets over the Executioner set. Another thing that is good to note with the legendary gear is that, of course, we have a 2-piece and a 3-piece set. The 2-piece set is always a massive bonus, and the 3-piece set is a decent bonus, but you don't get a 4th if you're wearing a 4th of the same gear set. So there's two ways to try to build a character to help you out. Is either you do a 3-piece set for this bonus, or if you're trying to push up extra stats, you can do like a 2-piece set of Gamblers to get that attack and attack speed, and then go 2-piece set of Executioner to get more attack and more crit rate. Or you can go into some of your support gear over here, and you can try to get like accuracy and skill haste, so you can basically do like a 2 here, and then just as a quick example, if I needed him to get more skill haste, I would come in and drop in some of my skill haste gear, and we could push up some skill haste on there. And we'll go over a little bit more of that after we finish talking about all the gear. So the next set is going to be the Troll gear. This one is going to be attack percentage and skill haste. Important to note that extra skill haste when you're doing double sets like this. And then you also get the gains 40% attack when launching a basic on a 3-piece set. So for this set, I think it shines on champions who are having a hard time surviving in boss fights. They can get some self-heal, or if you're lacking in healers, so you only have one healer on your team and they can't hit everyone at once, then you could pick an attack character that's not receiving the heal, drop a troll set on them and let them heal themselves a little bit. This is also very good for Vortex if you're trying to survive longer. So in Vortex, there are two different strategies that I like to utilize, and I've been lately just trying to find the balance between them. And it is either going all out damage, pushing up this gambler set as much as I can with crit rate, crit damage, attack, and then trying to burn the boss's damage as fast as I can in the fight before I die. Another strategy is to try to increase the longevity of your characters, which could then be utilizing something like a troll set to get that extra heal, and then utilizing like an HP or defense, gloves or chest, depending. You still want to try to balance out your stats depending on your substats to keep up your attack, crit rate, crit damage, but you can get one or two pieces of gear that are HP defense, or even on your runes that are HP defense, that will help that survivability, and then that helps you survive longer. So instead of doing mass damage early on, you do mass damage over a long period of time. Now the next sets to get into are going to be your more tanky gear sets, and this is going to be your ancestral protection gloves or ancestral protection gear. So this one is definitely meant for a tank. You get HP, defense, and on a 3-piece they can take 15% of damage that would go to the rest of the team on themselves, while reducing some of the damage that they take. So this is really, really good for someone who's super tanky. I like to use a 3-piece set of this on Horus whenever I'm doing dungeons that the rest of my team needs to stay alive and they're having a little bit harder time staying alive on. So this one's definitely for that. Your next set is going to be these ones. They changed it this season. So in season 0, this used to give resistance and HP. Now it gives enlightenment and HP. The change is actually really good. At first I didn't like it, but now that I'm getting more into the game, I do like it. The reason being is this set now can be utilized especially on your support healers. So your healers that use enlightenment, such as Catherine or Jillian here, so Catherine being the epic version, you get a times HP times the enlightenment bonus. So for a character like this, once you start farming up that gear, it is really good to utilize, because what you're going to get from this is you're going to get that HP survivability, and you're also going to get an enlightenment push, so they get more survivability while simultaneously they're healing up your team more. Now on the third piece of this, you get that the hero heals themselves after unleashing their ultimate. I would say that this is really good for any character, depending on how you're wanting to build them, but especially for those long-term battles. So if you're doing like Vortex and you have your healer in there, this would be very good for a 3-piece on a healer that needs enlightenment. And you can also add some extra healing on themselves to keep themselves alive if they're taking too much damage. If they're not taking too much, it's fine keeping up with your other characters, then you can do like a 2-piece of this and then drop into like a 2-piece of the 3 years over here. That'll give you some more skill haste. So that being our next set, which I guess we should be getting you the guys the correct name. Brotherhood Spirit would be the next set. This one is going to give us accuracy and skill haste, and then on the third one, after the wearer unleashes their ultimate, allies gain 15% extra attack. So there's a few ways to use this gear piece. Is definitely using that 2-piece to get that skill haste and accuracy depending on who you're building. Currently I use this one in Vortex on my tank who's multitasking. So if you come here, we'll go into his set. So for him right now, I am using in Vortex this HP defense, along with this for the accuracy and skill haste. And then the goal for that is that we get enough accuracy to land his attack down, while at the same time we get the extra skill haste so he lands it more often. So this is a very good set to pair just for the 2-piece bonus. Now if you're gonna use it on a good support character, so say you have a healer who's just fine in survivability, and you may not even need this accuracy, but you're wanting skill haste, something that you could do is to do 2 pieces of this paired with 2 pieces of troll armor, and then you get 40 skill haste on the character. So if you're looking just for pushing up how fast someone is doing a move, it's a very good strategy to go 2-piece between the troll gear and 2-piece between this Brotherhood Spirit gear. This one is very good for all content. I think that in season 0, this gear was very undervalued. Another strategy to use for this is, say if you have a healer you need going fast, you can use a 3-piece set of this to get their skill haste, and then simultaneously they're giving that extra attack to your team. So very good for bosses depending on how your team is timed out. You get your healer where they move slightly faster than your attack units, and then you set up your little timings to where they always use it at the same time. You have your healer give everyone extra attack, and then immediately after, you can have your attack units hitting the boss. Another way you could do this is, say you have something like this Crown of Unclean here, you put it on an accuracy character who's going to be dropping something down. So you have someone like my tank here, Sagomir, or say you're using someone like Dane to take off buffs and also drop a decrease attack on your enemy. Even for PvP, you stick something like this on here, he is then going to drop defense on the enemy while simultaneously giving your allies extra attack. So it's very, very good for stuff like that, especially in wave content and bosses. I mean, overall, you could use this gear anywhere. And then your last piece is going to be the Holy Hunter gear for the accuracy and resistance. And then the last set gives you a stun. I think this gear mostly shines in wave content. Yeah, look at this God tier piece, quad roll and accuracy. But in wave content, especially like in Feywilds or PvP, the reason being is you have, tons of enemies. You can, if you get a 3-piece set on this, you get that stun, especially in PvP. But in later Feywilds, you'll notice that sometimes what it takes to win a match is going to be to get your ultimates off before the enemy does, so that you can melt their attack units. And having something like this helps you do that, because if you have a super fast support character get this off and stun the enemies, that will give all your attack characters time to get their ultimates off prior to the enemy's faster characters getting theirs off. So this is very, very good for that type of content. Also, that resistance is very useful if you're not having a cleanser on your team, especially in stuff like Grave of Rot and Feywilds, where you're getting poisons on you all the time. So this gear will help you build up that resistance for that as well. Mixing that with like a resistance rune, you should end up getting plenty of resistance to do tons of content. Now, for going through all of the sets, some of the ways that I like to pair these up, depending on my content, is you either want to, of course, like I said before, get a 2-piece effect and do 2-piece, or you want to get a 3-piece effect. My favorite combination so far is doing troll gear with skill haste mixed, and with this with skill haste. And on an attack character or support character, someone like Dane, who can also do damage, that's very good because you're getting your accuracy, your skill haste you need, and then you're getting attack from the troll gear. So that one's a good combination to work towards. On my enlightenment characters, right now I have this gear with enlightenment HP, and I'm mixing it in with this gear to get the extra enlightenment. But now that I just finished farming some Grave of Rot, I'm going to change it to where I'm getting enlightenment HP, and I'm going to drop some of this on my healers to get that extra skill haste. I think that's going to be really good for them. So this is a good gear set to mix 2 of. For this one, if you just have a character who you're needing to push either accuracy or resistance on, you could do a 2 set of this, and you can mix it with anything else. So say you have attack unit who is just taking too much damage in Grave of Rot because of poisons or heal reductions, you can mix it with 2-piece of any of your attack gear, which would go good with like something like this where you're wanting to get your crit rate and your attack up. So that's a good set to mix it with, but really any of it depending on how you're building your character. If you have good crit rate substats, then the Gambler set's really good because you get the attack speed, or the Troll gear because you get more skill haste. So it's good to mix. Basically just mix and match depending on what type of team you're building and how you're trying to do it. For attack gear, of course, it's good to mix and match any of the attack gear. If you're doing a poison hero, you could do the what is this, Alabaster set, I believe. Sorry guys, I get the names mixed up. Platinum Night Quality, I think they changed it. It used to be Alabaster, I believe, but you can mix something like this, 2 sets on a poison damager to get their enlightenment up, and then add executioner to still maintain some crit rate, or add gamblers to get the attack percentage, attack speed, something along the lines. Or if you have an attack character that you're using that just is not staying alive and you're still wanting to use like attack percent chest or something, you can jump into adding one of your support gears. With that being said, after we get into the mixing matching, now I want to talk about like your substats and how I decide what I sell in my gear sets. And each gear set's going to be slightly different because each one is going to be used for different reasons. Most of your attack gear is mostly only needed for attack champions. And then most of your defense gear can be used on attack or defensive champions. So you're looking at different stats for each type of set. Now, whenever I go into my sell plan, which I'm not going to have any right now, but as you start farming more and more, basically I just sell all my epics almost instantly. You do want to save a few sets, because if you get something that has really good substats, like this is a crit rate, crit damage, and then you get the gear to upgrade this to a legendary gear, you can try to get, say if I get another roll on crit rate, and then I level up to 20 and I get another roll on crit rate or both on crit damage, then that becomes like a god tier piece. So you want to save a few epic pieces that have some really good substats like that you want to level up. I usually drop them on a character to lock them so that I don't accidentally sell them, and then that way whenever I'm finished farming, I can just go in here, hit epic, sell all my epic gear, and that's how I make my money to then go into my legendary gear. For all my legendary gear sets, I then level everything up to 4 so that I know what my substats are going to be like, and that way I have an idea of if it's going to be worth leveling up more or not. On my chest and gloves, I always, as soon as I'm done farming, I come in here, flat rate attack, HP, defense, and I auto sell all of them. The reason being is even if you get some god tier substats on one of these flat stats, the difference between the flat stat and the percentage main stat on one of these pieces is so massive that a percentage piece is always going to be worth it way more than these are. So I just get rid of those pretty much instantly. When it comes to chest pieces, what I try to do is in each set, I want to keep at least 1 accuracy from each set, 1 enlightenment from each set, and 1 resistance, because you never know whenever you're going to have a niche character that needs one of these 3 things in there. So if you have 1 from each set, it gives you options as far as mixing and matching your pieces, whatever you're trying to use that. Once that is done, I always keep my attack, HP, defense sets. Even if I'm not sure if I'm going to level them up on chest and gloves, I always keep them, because you never know whenever you're going to get something that you need for a certain character. And say, like, for instance, I have Oster using my crit rate attack defense set, and then I have this Voresh wearing a crit rate attack set, and then if I have a third character I need to build that ends up needing one of these, and maybe it doesn't have the substats I need, but just because of the main stat, I will at least have that for them depending on what's going on with it. My goal is to keep at least 3 pieces of each type for each gear, which is hard to even get that many farmed up initially, just because you never know when you're going to need those percent stats. So for chest and gloves, highly recommend doing that for them. Now when it comes to substats, like I said, what I like to do when I get my legendary gear is level up to 4. And the reason being is whenever I start building a character, especially if I'm building a 3 set with 1 broken piece, I want to be able to search for what I want. So for instance, whenever I was building my Garrett here, which I still need to farm better gear to get him where I want him, but I was trying to farm him up some gambler gear for the Vortex, and this is what we came up with. I got up to 80% crit rate. What I did was, after I got on these 3 pieces, I go into my gloves and I'm like, okay, with what's left, I really need crit rate, so I'm gonna do crit rate main stat. Or what you can do is, if say you have crit damage gloves on your character, and I'll show you my other set, which I think is actually like what I'm trying to describe. So in this one, we have crit damage gloves, so I really needed to push up some crit rate. So then what I did was, after I got my gambler set stuff, my gambler set gear in place, and I knew where I was at, I knew what subsets I still needed, I went to my chest here, and I was like, okay, I'm doing Vortex. I would prefer a defense or HP, but his crit rate's low, so let's put on crit rate. And then I went through my gear to see what was the best fit. And of course, I had this piece who's from a piece of gear. It's not giving me any extra bonus as far as these go, but it's filling in that crit rate that I need and pushing me up to that 90% crit rate, so that way I can do the damage I need. Of course, my end goal is to get crit rate pushed up higher to where I can take this artifact off and go on to something that's going to raise our attack a lot more. I just don't quite have the gear yet for what I'm looking for that. But it's something to keep in mind. If you level everything up to 4, then you can search through, you can find something like what I did with this one. I was like, okay, this one had crit rate, it has attack, it's going to help him out. And then you level up the gear and see if you get what you land into. And then what you can do is you can level it up to like 8. If it doesn't land on something you want, go to the next piece that might have a crit rate substat, level it up. And then if you do get what you want, level it up again, and so forth, and just go back and forth until you have one that has the better substats of what you're looking for. Now for each gear set, my attack gear sets for all of them except for this one. So for my Executioner, Gambler, and Troll, I mostly look for attack, crit damage, and crit rate substats. My goal is to get at least 2 of them as a substat, and then if I can get 2 of them as a substat, those are usually good pieces to roll for me. And then depending, so this is a resistance chest, which I don't need right now, but it has attack and crit damage, so that's like 2 substats that normally what I would want. So what I would do is usually I'd already have everything leveled at 4, and then I would come into here and say I was looking for resistance for Grave of Rot. I would select this piece and be like, okay, it has attack and crit rate. I would just level up 1 at a time. Like, okay, we landed on crit damage. That's good for us. So I'm willing to pay to take it up a little more, landed on HP. Then I would go back and kind of recalculate, okay, is this going to be good for me, depending on where we're using it at. If I have a character that's getting the crit rate, then absolutely I'm still going to try to level this up more. But if the character I have needs crit rate, then I'm going to drop that piece and I'm going to try to farm a piece that has that substat crit rate. So when I level these up to 4 for a piece like this, for instance, we got resistance, we're on an attack thing, we have an attack percentage, and we have an attack flat. I don't have any crit rate or crit damage, so this is not a piece I'm too sure I want to invest in. I might go up to see if I get an attack percentage, which I did not get. So for me, that's going to be a sell, because I'm looking for this piece, I would only want attack percentage sub rolls, and already not getting it, it's not going to be worth trying for from this point on. So definitely a sell for me. And it doesn't have 2 of the ones I'm looking for. I'm not really looking for attack flat. That is okay to get like attack percentage and attack flat, and then like a crit rate, that's still a decent flat substat, but I want mostly attack percentage, crit rate, crit damage as my substats on my attack gear. For this set, I also consider Enlightenment, of course, because this whole set is about giving Enlightenment. So if you can get good Enlightenment rolls on this, they're going to be good sets to keep. Probably not on this. I think it's on the weapon. I had some that have some really good Enlightenment sub rolls. Like that's a double Enlightenment sub roll. That's a good set for me because I'm getting that extra Enlightenment boost, which is what I'm already using this for. So then I can use that on someone who needs that extra Enlightenment. Now for an attack character, for poison one, they tend to be very stat heavy. Something like this would be good for poison character because we get our accuracy that your poison character needs and our Enlightenment that your poison character needs. So for poison character, this is a pretty god tier weapon, and that's kind of what you're looking for your poison characters in this gear. You want some accuracy, you want some Enlightenment, and then any crit rate, crit damage, attack that you can get is just bonus on there. Now do note for your poison characters, your poison itself does not crit and it does not do crit damage. So for poison character, you're mostly going to be looking for accuracy, Enlightenment, and attack percentage. And then if you can get the crit rate, crit damage, that's just kind of a bonus for your damage on there. For my defensive gear sets, I'm looking for mostly HP defense percentage. The flat stats, they're not the best to have with this set. Basically, I rolled it up and got a percentage, and then I risked it for some more. I think this was one of my first pieces I had, and I still needed to use it, so I went ahead and leveled it all the way up. Normally, I would have probably not leveled that up to max. But basically what I like to do for them is I go in, I look for my HP defensive substat for this gear, and then I try to find stuff that has that, and those are what I try to level up first because I want to get those rolls that are going to give me much more survivability. And for these, since I know they're going to be on support characters that may need to land debuffs, I like to see those accuracy substats on there as well. So especially like a gear piece like this, HP, defense, and accuracy, that's a pretty high-tiered weapon for me because I can use it on a lot of characters. So for your defensive gear, you definitely want to look into that. The difference between my defensive and my offensive gear is that I still save like attack percentage chests and stuff like that on my defensive gear, because there are some times where you might be able to mix and match gear, increase your survivability on like say Vortex or something, and then you end up finding out that you're doing more damage because you got an attack percentage defense gear, which I seem to get more attack percentages in. So say you get like an attack percentage on here, and then you can add one more defensive gear on an offense unit, help them survive longer. It's a good strategy to use for some characters. Another thing to think about is if you do a lot of 3-piece set characters, you're going to have a broken set. So for this character, for instance, say that this wasn't one of the attack gears, say these stats were on one of these defensive chests, I would still use it because it has the stats that I need to plug into this character to make him better. So I still keep all of these just in case you can use them in a broken set as well. But once again, you can still add them on attack characters and it helps out. So just quick recap. The main things that you should really take away from this is that for boss fighting, I would say Gambler is still better than Executioner, but don't be afraid to mix and match two pieces to get those extra stats. The first set from all your legendary gear is the biggest bonus that you get. The third piece is a good bonus, but whenever you can add another 2-piece set, sometimes that is going to be better for your characters. And then the other thing is that when you are doing 3-piece sets, to remember, build your character best you can. So pick out your gear set you want, like for instance your Gambler set, build up your stats exactly how you want as best you can. And then for your broken piece, don't be afraid to reach out into any piece of gear and add your broken piece of gear into there to finish pushing up stats to what you're looking for on that, and that's going to help you get that out. Now you also need to be considering what you farm in your runes. I'm about to go farm some legendary runes in here. I just hadn't yet, but these are going to also kind of help you fill in holes. What I tend to do when I build my characters is I like to start with my runes, because usually I can see which ones have really good substats on my runes. So for instance, this one I'm seeing crit damage in my rune sets, and then I'm getting some skill haste and attack speed in my rune set. So I put my runes on, and then I know, okay, I'm looking for gear that has more crit rate to fill in the hole there. Or if you have runes that have good crit rate substats and attack substats, then when you go into your gear, you start looking for gear that has that crit damage. So you can fill in slots depending on what your rune sets look like as well. So keep that in mind as you're building characters. And then of course you either build up your set of gear first and then add runes on to complement it, or find the runes you want and then add your gear sets to complement your runes. Personally, I put the runes on first because for me it seems to be harder to get the runes that I want than it does the gear. So I put on my runes and then I slot in my gear to cover in what I'm looking for in gear. That's all I have for the video, guys. I hope this helps some of you out, and hey, peace out. Y'all have a good day.